welcome, folks, to another episode of Verado. I'm on today with Derek Sewell from DataX. I met Derek through professional life. We've been chatting about all things data, and he told me about his business, and we've gotten to know each other a little better. And we've invited him on the podcast because I thought it would be, good content. So welcome, Derek.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt.
Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, let's just get into it. I think you understand what Verado is, so I don't need to explain that. Why don't you just jump in and give me a little bit about your background, DataX, and kind of what you guys do, and maybe a perspective on where you think your business fits in the industry and kind of overall just industry trends. Just kick right into it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. So DataX, not to be confused with any other DataX company. We're often just clarify ourselves as DataX.ai just because there's some weird name companies out there. Just to give a little bit of background on myself, and then I'll switch back over to the company. So I've been in tech, goodness, for a very long time, probably 15 years. I've been working specifically in the artificial intelligence space, going on 6 years now. So AI, machine learning, deep learning, real AI use cases specific to, applied AI, not the hype that you hear about where, AI will solve every challenge in the world. And, we always, we love to run from those types of people. But I joined, DataX going on, 6 years ago. I oversee all of our strategic accounts, partnerships. I'm based in Texas, great state of Texas. Happy to be here. So it's been a fun journey.
Right on. Are you from Texas originally?
No, I'm actually from New Orleans. Yeah, I'm from New Orleans. So I like good food, and I grew up in a great culture, just a melting pot. So super fun. Came over to Texas actually 6 weeks before Hurricane Katrina hit and destroyed, the city.
Oh,
and
man.
it's a crazy journey. Yeah.
Yeah, my son just left. He was down in New Orleans for 2 years. Went to college down there. Yeah, loved it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it too. Definitely not the same since the storm, but still have tons of family and friends there. We go back to visit as much as we can.
Right on. Cool. So yeah, tell me about DataX.ai.
Yeah, no worries. It's funny because it's such a mouthful internal. We just always refer to it as DataX. We just never want somebody to go off, to some weird website because of it. So we always, provide some, qualifiers there. So DataX.ai, we focus on all things for, unstructured data. So specifically for data transformation services, really largely focused on, B2B and B2C. So that's, distributors, manufacturers, retailers. We work with companies of all sizes for their data challenges. In fact, actually how we came into this space, building AI solutions, taking care of problematic data sets, was we stumbled onto it because DataX.ai is part of a company also called Crowd Analytics. They actually represent the world's largest community of data scientists on a crowdsourcing platform. So we're often compared to like a Kaggle. If there's any data science techs out there or nerds like us, we're very much compared to that, except Crowd Analytics is a full solution, usually brought in by like Fortune 100 companies to find out what are the possibilities and limitations of applied AI. And so we would build out actual custom AI solutions to and the roadmap of the delivery of that solution for our clients. Well, that's actually how we fell into this space. We had no idea how bad product data was, specifically if you're talking about for e-commerce, ERP data, really any type of data management system, repository of data that is usually problematic, always a nightmare, regardless of if you're in B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter. And even in the public sector as well. And so our company focuses, we have specialized solutions, really solving those challenges. And, when we set out on this journey, we just decided, hey, how can we fix data that normally requires brute force? But for us, how can we do that faster, better, and less expensive than anyone else in the world? And so I'm very thankful we now dominate this space in that mode of engagement. So really it's been a fun journey. Yeah.
Right on. So, um, to give a little like real world experience in my day job, um, at Harris WebWorks, we deal with data all the time. And an example of what would happen is, let's say you've got a distributor who is working in brick and mortar environment where their buyers might know the products by name or ID or brand. So they'll have a SKU or a manufacturer's ID or a brand name, and they can go into their back office system through their POS or through a phone call and find the product. Then at some point, that company wants to put all of their data on a website or through a kind of universal catalog. So comparing one manufacturer's product with another manufacturer's product. Now you have these attribute sets that need to line up. So a size, a width, a material, they all are the same, whether it's manufacturer A or manufacturer B. And before they had to present all that data in um, a unified catalog, there was enough human knowledge to just be able to find the part through a phone conversation or just by naming the product if you were the buyer. And so when we tried to get some of these businesses, and this could be through the manufacturer or through the distributor, we tried to get their full product catalog presented in a sortable, searchable fashion where the product could be organized. We kept finding all these misalignments and gaps. So there was never like there was just incomplete data everywhere, and it's really hard to line things up. So this is kind of a real world experience of where product data, and this is very common, creates conflicts when you're trying to build an e-commerce site, for instance.
Yeah.
So that's when you guys would come in. Is that right?
Exactly right, Matt. And regardless of size of company, everyone always has the same exact challenge. We've seen, top Fortune 5 retailers and B2B distributors. They have exact same problem as the local mom and pop shop that is a distributor. Data comes in, it comes in from different sources. Well, all of that has to be fixed and structured into a source that you can then put in your e-commerce.
Mhm. And not every distributor is going to want to have their source data exactly like every other distributor. So there'll be proprietary data sets within that distributor data that might be kind of ancillary data that the distributor is using that's unique to the distributor, but it's not part of the manufacturer data when they're onboarding that data. Does that make sense?
Absolutely right. Yeah, exactly. So each distributor wants to put their own flair, really provide more of a competitive edge, according to their business. Because many of these distributors, these guys are coming with tons of knowledge on their products, and they can add that expertise in their product catalog, right? So they don't want to just have a mirrored catalog against every single one of their competitors, too. That's another thing as well.
And that might become a differentiator for that distributor is that
Yep.
they've kind of um, flushed out the descriptions or categorized things in their own unique way.
Yep.
So going back, because sometimes you know I have a tendency to nerd out and get into the
Me too.
granular pieces, and
Me
then
too, man.
sometimes the audience is like, I have no idea what they're talking about. So just some groundwork here. There's a lot of terms we throw around. Uh, Data naturalization, data normalization, data enhancement. You want to give me like kind of your view on what those different things are?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, probably the key term that we always go with would be normalization. Every now and then we certainly still hear the naturalization, but we kind of think of those as the same thing,
Yeah.
just a different way of describing it. But essentially, naturalization or normalization could be where you receive data or you have data sets and you say, here's a simple real world example. You might have data in your ERP or any other data management system, and it says country of origin, right? Well, then the value for that country of origin, that attribute, we call that an attribute, that could be abbreviated, for, made in USA, just puts US, or, it could be USA. So that's a very overly simplistic example. Or even if it's made in China, it would be like, the word China, China, or CH or C. Many people call it different things. And that's just an overly, simplistic example of natural normalization. But that's just a great, probably an example of what it means, the level of effort of what you have to do to normalize data. But when you start also talking about more complex data, it could be, product, like electrical. It could be like wattage, amperage, having to figure out what these abbreviations actually mean, because they're usually indicative of a complex product. Well, if you have one way, the logic of how you have data represented on one product, but if that's not uniform for every other single product in the same category of products, that are similar, then that becomes confusing to your customers, because when customers are on your website and they're looking for that data, well, if it's not normalized to a particular standard, and usually people who are buying these products typically know what they're looking for. And so it's not easy. It's definitely not an easy experience. Probably Matt, you might, being an e-com expert, you could probably speak to that even better.
Yeah, like if for someone to give you an example of non-normalized data as a user experience, let's
Yep.
say you're trying to filter by bolts, and in the drop down, you see the option for 0.25 inch and the option
Yeah.
for quarter inch, which is one slash
Yeah.
over four, right? So that's
Yeah.
non-normalized data. So you're like, well,
Yeah.
it's both, but some of the data came in, and then we've even seen it where someone wrote out the words quarter of an inch, or
Yeah.
the quotes would be in there, but they're not supposed to be in there. So
Right.
so you have to go through granularly and remove all that, and every place it says 0.25, you replace it with one quarter or vice
Yep.
versa. And then, yeah,
Yep.
units of measure is where things get really crazy. And then you have the
For sure.
metric conversions, right?
Yep.
Which I'm sure you deal with all the time, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of like to boast because we're so used to the challenges. We're usually dealing with the most difficult data sets in the world. And even that example that you just gave, we also call that a normalization of allowed list of values. So meaning that it has to be in an inch. Well,
Mhm.
it can only be in a number. It can't be written out quarter inch. So that we call that an allowed list of values for normalization of data.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
then there'll be, yeah, it gets crazy. But like, well, yeah, so just in the attribute sets, just so people listening understand, because a lot of people misunderstand the importance and the value of data normalization and the complexity of it too. But if you just a very simple plumbing part might have five different materials, five different colors, five different thicknesses, an outer dimension and an inner dimension, and then a
Yep.
different manufacturer, right? And a different origin. So all
Yep.
of that has to be tracked, right?
Yeah.
So
And be
that's
part of a
and
series.
and that's just a pipe, that's just
Yeah.
a simple pipe. So this is the
Yeah.
kind of stuff that we have to deal with, and that what you guys are obviously experts at. And then the data enhancements, let's say, or what are the terms you guys use to kind of like then additive,
Yeah.
like now it's normalized, we want to have some additional supplemental data added in as a kind of value prop.
Yeah, yeah, great question. When we came into this space, we heard so many different coin terms of, being used. And because we don't have any companies, or we don't, or I'd say that are similar to ours, we don't have any direct competitors in our space. Actually, the only competitors we deal with are those just doing it brute force, right? We're doing these data, normalizations and activities brute force. And what we've also always heard from those brute force vendors is they would say enrichment. So gap fill, those types of terms, because enrichment can be different from gap fill, right? So gap fill, you might just be missing the values. Maybe there is no country of origin, or maybe there is no value for that, that pipe, that inch diameter. And so that's where you would either do the, a gap fill, which is an activity of data enrichment or enhancement. I mean, they're all synonymous. Yeah.
Right. So it's basically like this is missing. We're gonna make our best guess at, or we're gonna know actually what the value should be, and we're gonna put it in there, even though we didn't receive it that way.
Exactly right. So like, and even just to clarify what that activity looks like, it's not as simple as like, oh, AI is going to guess what that should be. That there's in which I know that's probably a deeper part of the discussion. But how we even do that, that's a very technical way because we have to validate, are the values we populate for that gap fill, that enrichment, is it correct?
Hmm.
And also the data that you have, is that even correct? Right? Because typically, we're given data all the time and they think it's correct, but they're probably using data that's 25 years old, right?
Yeah.
That really has been discontinued 5 years ago.
Hmm.
you know, Especially on the B2B side, data can be more static. Whereas, retail, it's usually more dynamic, changes more often. But again, those changes still do happen.
Yeah.
And then even when you're talking about like different code sets of requirements, like for government, regulatory, and stuff like that, those data sets change even more just because there's new compliance standards. So, how do you really know that the data that you have is even trustworthy? So, that's the first thing we do. And then we fill out whatever you're missing. So, we validate and then fill out. That's part of our gap fill and enrichment process. We really just say enrichment because it's all
Enrichment.
encompassing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. So one of the things that we've been working on in the agency side is PIM systems. So it's kind of, and that's a really growing area of the B2B e-commerce space or manufacturers and distributors across the board. Even if they aren't directly engaged in e-commerce, they need to have their product data in a single system. And it's not always a great idea to put that in your ERP system,
Right.
right? Because
Completely agree.
it kind of blows it up. Like, your ERP, you need to have financial data and,
Yep.
your accounting and warehouse and logistics and all that. But if you have a product data set that's got a million SKUs and 300 attributes, you're talking about, you know, 300 million little chunks of data. You don't want
Yeah.
that in your ERP. Otherwise, you're going to get a big freaking bill from Oracle.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The customization billable hours are absolutely insane. And a lot of times they have or ERPs they have, limitations on descriptions, like how many character, the character limit of a description. It can only have so many characters. Well, if your product has, a lot of characters, then you're obviously going to be in trouble. So there tons of limitations there for sure.
Yeah, and then images too. Like
Yeah, oh yeah.
yeah, and we've had clients where all their images are in their ERP system. We're like, you probably should take those out of there. But that's also the process. That's the process of
Yeah.
modernizing a business. Like there was a way of doing it that worked for years, and you're looking for those, ways to reduce friction and to streamline and to modernize. And it's not always about sales and marketing and growth, which is obviously hugely important and, you know, not at all irrelevant. It's a big part of it. But there's a lot of wins that could be seen by just getting more accurate and more efficient so that when you do things over and over again, there's fewer manual inputs. It becomes more of a, streamlined, efficient process with your different systems talking to each other, all the way back from like intaking of orders to processing of orders to shipping of orders to supplier data, inbounding supplier data. So everything, all the touch points, everything between the customer and your partners and your suppliers and your processing all relies on accurate data,
Yep.
right? So if your data is not accurate, you're going to have errors, and then people are going to jump in and intervene, and then there'll be a kind of a stoppage and a manual process, right?
Yep.
And so that's one of a huge value of having your normalized data and enriched data ready is that there's going to be fewer errors and fewer stoppages of workflows.
Yeah, absolutely right. And normally to do that type of activity, Matt, it's and obviously this, it can get really expensive. And that's why, when we came into this space, like I said at the beginning of this interview, we focus on like, okay, how can we do this, faster, better, cheaper than anyone else, right? And so that's what we've been finding, over the last, 3 years. We've never been beaten on price to do the enrichment, the normalization of data, and that's regardless if you're a Fortune 10 company or you're a small local mom and pop shop. Our pricing is standardized, and we didn't want because we saw how complex it can get in pricing. Um, And we're just like, we're done with this. We want to help companies that are actually competing also against these large enterprises. So we're we're trying to be an equalizer in that sense, trying to solve these data challenges. Plus, like you said earlier, there for you just to get data and then have it represented just like how everyone else has it represented, that's not a competitive edge, right? And that's why syndicated data, if you're, because you can get a lot of great content from subscription services for, well, I say a lot of great comments, some great content from subscription services from like different content programs. And we actually even work with specifically a buying group for, and they do such a wonderful job. But again, if you're in a business that maybe is underrepresented for the industries that you serve, well, then what do you do for data? The only way you can do it is get it directly from manufacturers. And good luck getting the data from manufacturers in your exact format and
Yeah.
your template, how you want it.
Yeah.
You Because they're just going to ignore you because every other distributor is also requesting the same thing. Yeah,
Cool. So, just kind of wrapping it up here. This was great, by the way.
thanks.
Um, when a client comes into us, we do a gap analysis. So it's current state, future state. Obviously, DataX.ai is leveraging AI to clean data, and there's a current state. What's your assessment of like where AI is helping businesses on this component of the business? And what do you kind of see might be the future state of AI helping businesses in this capacity?
Yeah, great question. I think the models are only getting better. The only thing is, I always caution people about having a lot of hope in AI because I've just been seeing this over the last almost 6 year journey of the state of AI. It's great for some aspects of it, right? Everybody works with ChatGPT and ask it good, simple questions. But when you're asking very technical questions, or it can hallucinate, right? What we found in our business is the only successful way to leverage AI is through a hybrid approach of actually using humans in the loop, our own human, validation, our data stewards and data scientists that are actually, pulling stratified samples, doing manual reviews, pulling those samples just to see, okay, did the model predict, what that value should be, based on this unstructured data set, and then therefore we can, fill out a template. Um, but what we're finding is the models are just getting better and better, right? Because it's reinforced learning at scale, right? That's
Hmm.
the whole point of where we're at in our AI journey in terms of humanity, globalization, that is. So I would say in the future state, the data is just going to get processed even faster and faster. Right now, even just what we do, it's faster than if you just use humans to do it yourself, right? But because we still have a human in the loop approach, doing validation checks, actually checking to make sure is the data accurate that you're getting back. Now that should never be the client's burden. That's on us to ensure we're actually providing, the accurate data. And keep in mind, we're doing this for millions of products at scale. And so millions upon millions. I don't even know what our latest number of how many we've processed, probably somewhere close to a billion, um, or a few billion. But yeah, so I would just say, Matt, it's a tough answer, but AI will evolve to just be faster and faster in the processing of this data. And maybe, who knows, maybe ChatGPT might get better enough where you can start running files through that and the hallucinations might be less or non-existent. Currently, there's a reason why no mission critical data is ever fed through ChatGPT without a full manual review and validation of those data sets. So businesses are learning, hey, I can't use ChatGPT or generative AI without doing full value review to make sure that it's actually correct in what it's giving back. Anyway, that was a long answer, but I digress with that.
No, that was awesome. Hey, so anything that we need to know about DataX.ai that we didn't get to before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, you can check us out. Really, just datax.ai. We give free samples where if you have data sets, you're like, man, what could datax.ai do for us in our business? And keeping in mind that we deal with all types of unstructured data, so not just product data, but also invoicing data, unstructured data, human resources data, anything that needs to be normalized, gap fill, enriched, any of the things that we're talking about here. We do free samples of that, very large free samples. So that way you can actually validate and understand the pricing before you ever even engage with us. So the cool thing, I think, what our clients love about us is we're a no risk provider, meaning that you get to see what's going to happen, exactly what, if you move forward with us, what would be the pricing. And of course, you're going to see that we're less expensive than anyone else in the world. We stick to that and we fight for that. So it's pretty fun. But
Right
yeah,
on.
please check us out. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn, Derek Sewell, on LinkedIn. That'd be cool too.
All right. Right on. So, guys, DataX.ai, domain experts on product data normalization. I appreciate you, Derek, taking time today to chat with us. And again, wrapping up, this is Verado, Matt Harris with Verado. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Check us out next time.